Hello and welcome once again to our family workshop. In this video, we are sharing with you a different idea when it comes to your scroll sawing. We're always looking for ways of presenting things that might help you out as the viewer. So that's the emphasis of our YouTube channel, is to try and help you out with ideas and methods that might be useful. In this video, we're looking at progression. So we're taking one design, in this example, a drawing of a fish, and showing how it can be made in a number of different ways. We start off by doing the preparation for our first scroll saw project. We're using stack cutting. That's where you're cutting out more than one layer at a time. And we're using a simple design. This style is ideal if you are new to scroll sawing, if you are a beginner. In this example, the eye of the fish is being cut out. We then sand everything on the belt sander to allow it to sit nice and evenly on our scroll saw. And we go across to cutting out that basic outline. This is one of the more simple ways that you can do your scroll sawing. There's no pierce work, none of that internal cutting. You cut out the shape following the line. So cutting to the outside edge, cut out that shape, and at the end of it, you have your fish design completed. A simple style, a simple approach, and the first of 4 different methods that we're sharing with you. As you can see, we go back across to our belt sander just to take off any rough edges, anything that needs sorting out afterwards. We then use our Starbond super glue, and we're going to stick our fish design to a background. We've chosen a beautiful piece of olive wood and a simple piece of mahogany. I've marked it out with the grain going horizontally to try and create that effect of the water in the background. We also then mark out a shape, a simple outline again as our background, and cut that shape out on the scroll saw. So this first project is entirely focused on making an item by using external cuts. Just simply following that outside line and cutting the profile. On that background, we take off any sharp edges that we need to. On the belt sander, we drill a hole that will be used to put a keyring clip through to turn this item into a product. And then our focus goes on to the finishing of our first project. 3 coats of shellac sanding sealer. We apply it in the direction of the grain. So on the fish, we apply it vertically. On the background, we apply it horizontally, working in the same direction as the grain. We put that little keyring clip on using our pliers, and that completes our first project, a fish keyring. Straight on to our second project, and once again we are using stack cutting, but the idea of this video, as we mentioned, is to show progression. So we're using that same fish design, we're sticking the design onto the wood itself, but this particular project is not going to just have an outline cut out, so not just using those external cuts, we're also going to do some pierce work. So we're onto that pillar drill to drill the holes out for doing our pierce work, all of our preparation for our scroll sawing. We're also using an element of line art. That's going to be the focus of one of our other projects, so we'll talk more about that later on. Drill a larger hole for the eye of the fish, and also the hole at the top of this hanging decoration for us later on to put a little bit of ribbon through onto the belt sander, and we smooth off the back, and that allows us to get this nice and flat on the scroll saw and reduce the chances of the item rocking about as we're trying to cut it out. So onto the scroll saw, and the first thing that we're working on is the pierce work. That's the way we tend to organize things, is to do all of our pierce work first of all. It allows us a slightly larger piece of wood to hold on to, keeping those hands well away from the cutting edge. The scroll saw is relatively safe, but it is always better if you can keep your hands away from the blades. We then cut the outline, and you'll see us using a technique where we cut into the point, reverse the blades, and then cut in an angle to join up with that point. That allows you to get really sharp, fine, accurate cuts. On the belt sander, sanding everything off, taking off any sharp edges. In this project, we're also incorporating our wood carving skills. We can use wood carving alongside our scroll sawing to shape the fish and to add little bits of detail and character into the project. The particular piece of wood that I'm working on is a piece of Iroko. Not the easiest wood for carving, but not the most difficult as well. We enjoy working with it. Some may avoid it, but for ourselves, it carves quite nicely. 3 coats then of shellac sanding sealer, rubbing it down in between each coat. We then add that ribbon to the top, tying a knot in it, which will allow it then to be a hanging decoration. Tie that loop, cut off any excess ribbon, and you've completed your second project. On to our third project, and we're using stack cutting as a method once again. Stack cutting is great for 2 reasons. You can use it creatively. You can also use it for production reasons. It will allow you to produce more items for your one single scroll saw cut. Stack 3 pieces. When you're scroll sawing, you end up with 3 items as opposed to just cutting the one out at a time. As we mentioned on the previous project, we're using line art. It's that same design. So all of these projects have the same design, but we're demonstrating how we adapt them to use different methods and different approaches. All of these then can be applied to all sorts of different designs. We drilled all those holes for doing that line art. We then use our scroll saw to cut out lines to create the impression of an image in the woods. What this means, when you're designing, you have to decide which parts of the line you're going to leave in and which parts of the design you're going to cut out. If all of the lines are joined up, the problem you have is that the item would fall apart. So we do our internal cuts using those holes that we've drilled on our pillar drill, following the lines to create that line art image, and we have our finished outline of a fish. The final part of the process then is cutting out the surround. So whenever you're working on these projects, the final part of the process that we do is cutting the surround. Once you do that, the different layers come apart and you can't continue scroll sawing the design together on all the layers. We're turning these into fridge magnets. So we're using our Starbond super glue and the accelerant. If you want a discount on that, use that discount code LOVESPOON using that link that we have in the description. We once again add 3 coats of shellac sanding sealer, and that is our third example of a different style using line art for the same design. On to our final project. And again, stack cutting is the order of the day. We're stacking those layers together. In this example though, the stack cut is not for production reasons, it's more for creative reasons. We're using 4 different colored pieces of wood, stacking them all together, and then later on, we will put the different pieces that we've cut out together to create an image that has all sorts of different contrasting colors. We drill out that hole as well for the eye, onto the belt sander to sand the back to make it nice and smooth in preparation for our scroll sawing. So this design, this drawing, is probably the most elaborate because we have to cut away all the little parts, all the separate sections. For instance, the fin on the bottom, we've got in 3 separate parts. The fin on the top, again, is going to be 3 separate parts. The body is going to be made up of several parts as well. And we will use these to create an image that has beautiful contrast in all of the colors. Follow the guidelines, cut out those different sections, and that completes the preparation for our fish when it comes to the scroll sawing. With this one, we're going to create a background to get that fish stuck together and to have all those contrasting colours. We need something to stick it onto. We make a background using an old plaque that we've made many years ago as the template, mark out the lines and cut that simple background surround on our scroll saw. We're using a piece of teak for the background, a piece of wood that contrasts the colours that we've used in our stack cutting process. We're using that Starbond super glue again and the accelerant, and we start sticking together all the different parts of the fish to create our fish on the background image. Work out where you want it positioned, which colours you want in which position, stick it all down, add a little bit of coloured super glue, that black super glue, to create that definition in between the different layers of our fish design. Carve the background, carve the fish itself, and that is our final style of fish themed scroll saw project. Afterwards, we're doing some hand sanding just to round everything off, smooth it all off. We start off with a P grade of around about 150 and then increase from there, going up to P320. We're sanding the back of the plaque, so this is going to be a little hanging plaque. Sand it all off on that belt sander. Also drill a hole in the background so it can be hung on the wall. And that is our other style for how you can take that fish design and adapt it to create all sorts of different effects using the scroll saw. 3 coats of shellac sanding sealer and a final coat of beeswax mixed with linseed oil. 1 fish design, adapting it in 4 different ways to make 4 completely different style projects. 1 simple surround, 1 including a surround and pierce work, 1 using line art, and the other using that stack cutting to create that interest in the image itself. Let us know in the comment section which one of those is your favourite. Which one do you plan on having a go at making yourself? If you're new here and you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you know when we upload another video. And as always, thank you again for watching.